Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are taking, I think, a really fascinating and often surprising journey into one of the most accessible texts in the early Buddhist canon.
Oh, absolutely. We're diving deep into the Udana.
Exactly, Bhikkhu Sujado's translation, which he calls the heartfelt sayings.
And it's just a marvelous collection. Not just for academics, but really for anyone who wants a shortcut to the spiritual essence of the Dhamma.
We're looking at 80 short discourses. They're inspirational, they're profound, and often intensely personal.
But what I think really elevates the Udana is that it combines those, ecstatic declarations of truth with these vivid, almost cinematic stories.
Absolutely. And that's our mission for this deep dive, really,
Mm.
to understand the structure that's just beneath the surface.
Mm.
The people who compiled this text, they created a very specific, cohesive narrative. It's essentially the story of the Buddha's life after his awakening.
Right. It charts this whole course from that initial state of absolute bliss right through to his final teachings and his legacy.
And that journey really starts with the title itself. We have to pause on that word, Udana.
We do. Linguistically, it means upbreath or inspired utterance. But the commentary, well, it gives it this much more poetic lift. It calls it an overflowing of joy in the heart.
That sets such a different tone, doesn't it? It's not
Okay.
just rules or sermons. It's an ecstatic text.
It is. And this brings up a really crucial point. These verses are often compared to the Dhammapada,
The sayings of the Dhamma, which is just pure verse.
pure verse. But the key difference here is that the Udana keeps the full narrative background right there in the canonical text.
So the Dhammapada gives you the punchline.
Exactly. Well, the Udana gives you the whole setup, the context, the characters, everything that led to the teacher uttering that spontaneous truth. You get the why behind it all.
And that story begins immediately. I mean, we jump straight into the aftermath of the Buddha's realization. He's meditating at the root of the tree in Udavela.
But it doesn't ease you in. It starts with some of the heaviest philosophical doctrine you can imagine, the threefold proclamation.
It's a bit of a shock start, really. The opening three discourses just immediately tackle dependent origination. You mentioned forward, reverse, and both orders.
Yeah.
For someone listening who, hasn't spent years in Pali translations, what does that actually mean?
That's a great question because it sounds so technical, but it's actually the map of freedom. The forward order describes how suffering happens.
The cycle. Ignorance leads to fabrications, which leads to consciousness, and on to old age and death.
Right. And the reverse order, which is the ecstatic part, says that if you cut off that first link, ignorance, then the whole chain collapses. You cut off rebirth and you achieve freedom.
It's the highest philosophical victory, right there in the first few pages.
And it culminates in these declarations that this realization is so powerful, it scatters Mara's army, the forces of illusion. It redefines a true Brahmin, not by birth, but by insight.
It just grounds the entire path in this total victory over suffering. But then, as the text is so good at doing, it immediately pulls us back down to this stunning Hunan story by Hiya of the bark cloth.
Oh, this is one of the most famous stories, and for a good reason. It just showcases this almost impossible spiritual urgency.
So Bahia realizes he's dying, and he rushes to find the Buddha.
Who is literally on his alms round, just gathering food. Bahia interrupts him, begging for a teaching now. He says he can't wait.
And the Buddha actually pushes him off at first, saying, this isn't the time.
But Bahia insists with such passion that the Buddha just stops and delivers this incredibly brief, enigmatic instruction.
And that teaching he receives is legendary, isn't it?
It is. In the seen will be merely the seen. In the heard will be merely the heard. In the known will be merely the known.
It's an instruction in pure, non-reactive observation. You're just asking the mind to stop adding all its judgments and stories to everything it experiences.
And what's really wild is that Bahia gets it. He attains full awakening immediately, just on hearing that.
We don't even see him sit down and meditate.
Nothing. He achieves the highest goal, but then moments later, he's tragically killed by a charging cow.
It's such an incredible piece of storytelling. It shows that spiritual attainment can happen in an instant, but the physical world, it's still impermanent.
Exactly. And the narrative flows so beautifully from that intense peak into the second chapter, which is all about happiness, the bliss of freedom.
And this is where we get the unforgettable imagery of the Dragon King.
Mukunda, you have the Buddha meditating through this massive, unseasonal storm.
And Bukalinda, the great serpent king, coils around him 7 times and spreads his giant hood over him for 7 days to protect him. It's such an awe-inspiring image.
It is, but the verse that comes out of this high drama is so surprisingly simple, and this is really the core lesson of the whole text.
The quote is, "Seclusion is happiness for the contented. Kindness for the world is happiness for one who'd not harm a living creature."
Right. So the ultimate message is that this profound spiritual bliss, this thing powerful enough to summon a dragon king, is fundamentally connected back to simplicity and kindness.
It's not some complex metaphysical thing. It rests on basic goodness.
And the chapter reinforces that by contrasting it with the messy world. You have cruel boys hitting a snake and then King Pasenadi worrying about his authority.
And he has that great realization that all under another's control is suffering.
And that's the pivot. The text moves us from that pure solitary bliss into the complications that happen when the teacher starts dealing with the community.
Which brings us to chapters 3 and 4. Now the Sangha is forming and, well, human nature starts to cause some friction. The theme here is equanimity.
And you just cannot talk about human complications without talking about Nanda, the Buddha's cousin.
Right, he was famous for being completely dissatisfied with the spiritual life because he was still in love with his sweetheart. His mind was just elsewhere.
And the Buddha's solution here is it's spectacular. He realizes Nanda isn't ready for a purely intellectual teaching.
So he uses his psychic power and just transports Nanda to a heaven realm.
The heaven of the 33 gods, yes. To show him 500 dove-footed nymphs.
Who were, of course, vastly superior to his former love.
And this is the best part. The Buddha himself guarantees Nanda those nymphs if he just sticks with the training. It's the ultimate spiritual bait and switch.
It's just wild. But it's wildly effective. That guarantee actually shames Nanda.
It does. The other monks start mocking him, calling him a hireling, like a spiritual contract worker. And that shame is what finally forces him to strive for real freedom, for internal reasons.
A great lesson in skillful means. This chapter also introduces this high ideal of the Taden, the poised one.
The one who trembles not at pleasure and pain, the truly liberated person.
And how does the text make that high-level concept relatable?
Through the fascinating story of Pulindavacha, this monk, even though he was fully realized, had this deeply ingrained verbal habit.
He kept calling the other monks lowlifes, or outcasts.
Right. It was offensive, but he couldn't stop. And the texts say it was because of past life conditioning. He'd been a high-caste Brahmin for 500 lives, and that habit of looking down on people just stuck.
So even after awakening, the old conditioning was there.
Exactly. And the Buddha told the other monks to tolerate it, to see that it was just a remnant of old conditioning, not current malice. A powerful lesson in not judging people on surface behavior.
From there, we move to chapter 4, which focuses on controlling the mind. And this is where we meet Meghiya.
Ah, Meghiya. He was so eager to meditate alone in this beautiful mango grove.
But the Buddha warned him against it, told him he wasn't ready.
And Meghiya insisted. He went anyway, and of course he was immediately flooded with sensual, malicious, and cruel thoughts.
A classic mistake. Mistaking a beautiful place for a ready heart.
And that failure becomes the context for one of the most practical teachings in the Udana, the 4 essential practices for ripening the heart's release.
Okay, let's unpack those. They're so crucial.
First, the perception of ugliness to dissolve physical attachment. Second, cultivating love to give up hate.
Third, mindfulness of breathing to cut off that endless thinking.
And finally, the perception of impermanence, which is what uproots the conceit, I am. If everything changes, there's no permanent self to cling to.
And sometimes, the ultimate practice, especially when things are chaotic, is just to walk away.
Like the Buddha did with the quarrelsome monks at Kosambi. He just left.
He found solace in a forest grove. And I love the parallelism here.
Oh, it's brilliant. The Buddhist solitude is mirrored by a bull elephant, who had also left his herd to get away from the chaos. The message is just so clear. When community fails, solitude can be the most spiritual move.
As we move into chapter 5, the scope just widens considerably. The Dhamma is now universal. It's inclusive. We're back with King Pasenadi and Queen Malika.
And they have this intimate conversation about who in the world is dearest to oneself. The Buddha confirms it. One finds no one dearer than oneself.
Which sounds so self-centered on the surface. But it's actually the foundation of ethics. How does that work?
Well, if you understand how much you value your own life and happiness, you instantly realize every other being feels the exact same way. Therefore, you shouldn't harm them. Self-love is the prerequisite for universal kindness.
That idea of inclusion is then just radically reinforced with the story of Supabuddha the leper.
A man described as poor, destitute, pitiful, an outcast.
Untouchable in that society. Yet he has faith, he listens to the Dhamma, and he attains stream entry, the first major step on the path.
It just pounds home the point that this path is for anyone, regardless of their social or physical condition. It's all internal.
Udana then uses one of its most famous analogies, the ocean simile. 8 incredible things about the ocean that mirror the teaching.
The parallels are so memorable, like the ocean slopes gradually and the training is gradual. There's no abrupt cliff you fall off to get to Nibbana.
And just as all the rivers lose their names when they flow into the ocean,
All castes who join the Sangha lose their old identities. They just become ascetics who follow the Sakyan.
but the most important parallel is the taste, right? The ocean has one taste.
Salt. And the Dhamma has only one taste. The taste of freedom. It's such an elegant summary.
But of course, not everyone grasps that single taste. Chapter 6 is all about the danger of fixed views.
And this is where we get that timeless analogy. The blind men and the elephant.
It's a perfect illustration of the debates happening at the time. All these ascetics and Brahmins are arguing, each claiming they have the ultimate truth.
So the Buddha compares them to blind men led to an elephant. One touches the head and says it's a pot.
Another touches the trunk and says it's a plow pole. Another, the tail, and insists it's a snake.
And they all cling fiercely to their tiny piece of the truth, completely missing the whole vast animal in front of them. It's such a warning against dogmatism.
Something we could all probably benefit from remembering today. And this chapter also has a surprising little real-world detail about the corruption of religion.
Oh, the spy story. King Pasenadi reveals that some of the holy men he was bowing to were actually just his spies returning from a mission.
It's a great illustration of the difference between outer appearance, the robes and rituals, and genuine inner striving.
And the chapter closes with that powerful image of moths flying into an oil lamp, illustrating those fixed in what is seen or heard. They miss the essence and just suffer ruin.
Chapters 7 and 8 then build very quickly toward the end. The themes are liberation, the power of the path, and finally, Nibbana.
Chapter 7 really feels like a recollection of the Dhamma's power, using the image of water, of crossing the flood.
We see this with Bhatia the dwarf. Despised by society, but a fully awakened monk. His liberation is described as crossing the flood not crossed before.
Inner attainment, just completely overcoming outer appearance.
And we also get that satisfying story of the non-Buddhist ascetics trying to obstruct the Buddha by stuffing a well full of grass.
But the well just miraculously clears itself for the Buddha and Ananda, a perfect symbol of the Dhamma's purity, overcoming all these petty obstructions.
And that leads us to the culmination in Chapter 8. The most solemn, evocative declarations about Nibbana. It's defined almost entirely by what it is not.
Right. It's the dimension where there is no earth, no water, no fire, no wind. It's free of rebirth, free of what has been produced, made, and conditioned. You're pointing the mind past concepts.
And right in the middle of this sublime final journey, we get the story of Kunda the Smith, which has one of the most profound displays of compassion in the whole canon.
Kunda offers the Buddha his last meal, the pork on the turn, which leads to the Buddha's illness. I mean, you can only imagine the crushing remorse Kunda must have felt.
It must have been agonizing. But the Buddha's final instruction to Ananda addresses exactly that.
He says to tell Kunda he shouldn't have any regret. In fact, he's gained profound merit. The Buddha taught that 2 meals in his life have the exact same highest beneficial result.
The meal that led to his supreme awakening.
And the meal that led to his full extinguishment, his final passing.
That's just incredible. It completely reframes guilt into the ultimate honor. It's a final teaching on the non-duality of beginnings and endings.
And the Udana doesn't actually end with the Buddha's final breath. It ends with the spectacular passing of his disciple, Dabba Malaputta, who immolates himself using fire meditation. It just stresses this final, utterly remainderless nature of Nibbana. It's a powerful closing statement.
So what the Udana offers you as a learner is this full spectrum. You get the high-level philosophical doctrine-dependent origination, Nibbana, but it's immediately anchored in these deeply relatable human stories.
Stories of doubt, like Nanda, or profound inclusion, like Supabuddha the leper.
The compilers of this text, they did genius work. They didn't just collect sayings, they crafted a cohesive narrative arc based on the life of the teacher.
And it shows how the Dhamma addresses every single stage, from solitary bliss to community chaos, all the way to final peace.
I think this deep dive really shows that these ancient texts reveal their true depth when you stop seeing them as just a random sequence of events.
Exactly. You start seeing the deliberate progression of themes, the stories build on each other, and you start to uncover these hidden connections everywhere you look.
The Udana begins with the bliss of awakening and ends with the bliss of extinguishment. When you follow that progression, you realize the most profound insights often look surprisingly quiet. So here's a thought for you to chew on.
Is the journey toward that ultimate happiness defined not by the spectacular miracles and unique circumstances, but by the quiet, daily commitment to simplicity and kindness, as revealed in that Mukalinda Udana? But dispelling the conceit I am is truly the ultimate happiness.